Hello and welcome to episode 177 of the Clean Energy Show from the Telluride Film Festival in Telluride, Colorado. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham.
After 2 days of heavy rainfall left more than 70,000 trapped in thick mud in the middle of the remote Nevada desert.
Clean air is a human right, not a privilege. City Council's plan to deliver this is ULEZ, the ultra-low emission zone. Within ULEZ, people who drive older, more polluting vehicles are charged £12.50 a day.
Our first full-scale ocean cleanup system.
This tipping point marks the end of the age of the era of internal combustion.
This week, London succeeded in expanding its ultra-low emission zone in spite of legal challenges and protests. It was originally started by former Mayor Boris Johnson, believe it or not. I say give him the Nobel Prize, Brian, or at least a certificate of participation. I think you'd like that.
Automaker Kia is recycling 55 tons of waste plastic harvested from the ocean. The plastic comes from an entity known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. This is a fantastic initiative from Kia, but here's a thought. Maybe we shouldn't have put all that garbage in the ocean in the first place.
Rain swamps this year's Burning Man Festival on the Black Rock Desert in Nevada. Mud-caked hipsters in the orgy tent say they couldn't tell who or what they were having sex with, but promised to leave no trace behind.
California, the world's fifth largest economy, has officially signed on to the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. At this point, California is so woke, their citizens may never sleep again.
All that and so much more in this last chance to wear white edition of the Clean Energy Show. You may notice I have no beard. It was taken from me without consent.
Oh, no. I hate when that happens.
I did my sleep clinic at the hospital where I was on the wait list, so they called me and said that there was a no-show because you have to wait 15 months to get in.
Yikes.
So somebody decided 15 months they didn't care or they were drunk or something, and I got to go. So it was a weird experience. I go to the hospital like 9 o'clock at night. It's very quiet. There's no one around. I go to the sleep clinic. I push the buzzer. It's this whole hospital unit devoted to sleep study. This whole unit. I mean, it's a whole unit. It could be something else. It could be, penal therapy or something, but it's sleep therapy. There's one guy in there. He's listening to an NFL podcast. He's the nurse, and he's in charge of the night. And they have 2 patients. The other one was going to bed because she got there early, and I was a last-minute show. So they wired me up with 70 wires to my head. I still have goop on my skull. I can't get it off. They shaved me and wired me, and then they said, we want to shave your face because the CPAP mask that we're going to test on you tonight, we want to know if it, and I thought, okay, fine, do it, because I don't want to, it's a once in a lifetime chance to get into this clinic. But I mean, it was huge. They had a shower, they had a lounge with a TV, the cable TV, and they had all these rooms, and I guess sometimes there's 2 staff members and 4 patients, but this night, which was a Monday night, they had 1 staff member. I had the place to myself. The room is dark. The bed is hard. There's cameras in there. I found out by listening to them move. So it's kind of like a sci-fi movie. I don't know. It was very cinematic.
How can they accurately measure your sleep if the bed is hard and uncomfortable?
Good question, but I do know it was bigger. Everything was bigger. They accommodated very large people. So everything was, the chairs were double wide or 1.5 wide. Even my legs had sensors. The nurse had to come in and say that I didn't have a sensor popped off my leg. So that was unpleasant. I don't know. You're at the Telluride Film Festival, and I hear Emma Stone is there. Have you seen Emma Stone?
No, I have not seen Emma Stone, but I did see Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Well, I've got a message for Emma Stone, and it has to do with my love for her. And
okay.
And if you could express how I feel, I think just to tell her, James is up in Canada doing his podcast, and if she needs anything, just give me a call.
Well, I'm going to the film festival picnic right after this, so if I run into her there, I'll pass that along.
She's not in an official capacity because of the actor strike. She's just there because she's attending as an attendee, but she's not doing anything.
Yeah, so apparently there are normally more movie stars here at the festival. But because of the SAG-AFTRA strike, not so many, which is fine by me. I wouldn't normally care about Hollywood movie stars, except for Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She's so amazing.
Pretty cool.
the greatest.
Can you get her to? You should have had a guest as a guest on the podcast.
Oh, damn it.
And I know she doesn't care.
I didn't have a chance to talk to her, but she introduced a film. She's here with a film called Tuesday. It was produced by A24, which is a smaller production company that's agreed to all of the SAG-AFTRA demands. So they're allowing actors in those films to go ahead and promote them. So that was great that she was here.
And you're just hobnobbing in this little, describe Telluride. It's a little mountain town. How would you compare it to Whistler?
Yeah, I would imagine the Whistler Film Festival was probably inspired by Telluride. It's a mountain town that's mainly for skiing. Like there's an insane number of ski runs here. But of course, it's the summer, so they need other things to do. So they started this festival. This is the 50th year of the festival. I'm wearing the 50th t-shirt right now. Yeah, it's really cool. There's a small town of Telluride, and then there's a mountain village, which is another community. So I'm staying in the mountain village, and then they have a gondola that takes you from the mountain village down into town, and it's free public transit. It's a really sort of unique kind of thing that they have here. Anytime you want, you can just hop on the gondola and go between the mountain village. And
it's not just for the film festival, it's all the time?
Yeah, it's all the time. It's always free. Apparently, it was built by, I think, part of the business interests in the mountain village. They wanted to expand. There's sort of out of room in the town of Telluride. It's not a very big place. So if they want to expand, they expanded into this mountain village and then put in the gondola so that people can easily go back and forth between the two.
How high is the mountain village elevation-wise?
It's higher. Yeah, the whole area is definitely high elevation. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, I'm pretty high up. I want to talk a bit more about the film festival, but yeah, I want to talk about the kind of clean energy parts of it first, including the drive down here. So we drove in our new Tesla Model S, which is an amazing highway car. It's got insane range. Like there was one stretch where there was like 4 hours of driving between our charging stops. And I was a little bit nervous about that. No problem at all. Like, the rated range with the wheels I have is 600, but kilometers. And you get less than that when you're driving on the highway, but it seems like 550 kilometers easily. The range is just insane. It's the ultimate highway car.
Around 350 miles of range, roughly. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think of it in terms of hours, right? Like you could drive for 5.5 hours without charging, which is ridiculous.
And who can do that, Brian? Who can do that? Certainly not you.
Well, certainly not me. But driving through Wyoming, there was a 2-hour stretch there where we saw no civilization, basically.
And there's not much there to begin with.
There was a town halfway that we could have driven off the highway to go to. We decided not to, and it ended up to be, 2 hours without a town, without a gas station. I was quite surprised. There was occasionally like the cell service would drop out. And, the thing I got most worried about was, well, what if we got a flat tire and there's no cell service?
Yeah.
That was the only thing I was concerned about. But, no concerns about the car or the range or anything. But I did stop at the hardware store here in Telluride and bought one of those flat tire inflator kits that,
right.
fill in leaks. So we have a backup plan on the way back. But, just like a really amazing scenic drive. It is unfortunately too long. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm going to want to do this drive again. It's about 18 hours of driving in total.
It's hell.
It's hell, but just incredible scenery. North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Colorado, like just ridiculous. All these amazing mountain highways in Colorado. There's a Tesla supercharger 2 minutes from our hotel here in the mountain village. So like no concerns about charging. There's all kinds of charging.
See, we always go through Denver now. Well, we've done it 3 times, and it's only 12 hours to Denver. And once you get to Denver, it's interesting because it's Denver. The Toronto Blue Jays, my baseball team was playing down there for the first time in years while you were there. Didn't do so well. The mountain air. You can't throw those split curveballs and expect them to do things with physics if the air is thin and 35 degrees Celsius. It was hot there in Denver. Is it hot where you are?
Yeah, it's been kind of hot the whole time, like 25 Celsius and sunny.
Well, back home where we live, I can tell you it's smoky as hell, Brian.
Yep.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I mean, my windows are closed in September.
No, I've been looking at the air quality index for Regina, and it's a scale from 1 to 10. But apparently it's been 10 plus is what they call it, 10 plus.
Yeah, 10 plus is a void, and it's been criticized because who knows how bad it is. You have to go into the parts per million to see if you're as bad as Dubai or somewhere like that, and you don't want to be. So my doctor put me down for bariatric surgery wait list against my will. She said, well, put you on a wait list where you want to or not, because it's a long wait. And it's like 3 years.
Yeah.
I got the form in the mail and it says you cannot smoke for 3 months. You have to quit smoking, including marijuana and everything else. But I'm wondering, because it's a dangerous procedure for those people when you get put under anesthesia. But they say that we're smokers now because of this damn air that we've lived with all summer long here in Canada, in Western Canada. I mean, does that change things? It's crazy.
No, that's ridiculously bad for sure. So driving through North Dakota, very beautiful, like Badlands kind of country, but tons of oil wells, tons of pump jack oil rigs, which you've probably seen.
Tons of pollution from those oil wells.
When you drive through. And but the thing that surprised me more was lots of flaring wells, or what do they call that? So when there's excess natural gas, they just put up a pipe and they just set it on fire and they burn it. And there was just a crazy number of these flaring oil wells, and we do have those.
You can see them in satellite shots of light pollution.
Yeah.
They're there in the middle of nowhere because, well, there's not in the city, and it's depressing and crappy.
It's depressing because you've got this beautiful environment, and it's really marred by these oil wells and the flaring. But there was so many that I decided to Google it, and I found an article here from the Pioneer Press in Minnesota from just December of last year that tells me that North Dakota is the absolute worst for these flaring oil wells. North Dakota is one of 5 states that account for 90%, and they account for the most of this flaring. The second, more than Texas.
Nice.
It's really bad. So Texas, the leading oil gas state, flared 0.9%, and North Dakota flares 7% of their production. But then the other thing that we've talked about sometimes on the podcast is how just leaking methane, leaking natural gas is a greenhouse gas. And it's one of the reasons they burn it. Like, burning it is slightly better than releasing it into the atmosphere. But there was a recent study that found that just burning it like this is not as efficient as they thought. So the University of Michigan did a study, and it was previously thought that by burning it, you would do it at about 98% efficiency. So there'd only be 2% of the methane just leaking into the atmosphere. But they did a study and found it's only actually 91%. So, 8 or 9% of the methane is just leaking into the air, which is a very bad greenhouse gas.
Every time there's a study on this, it's worse than we knew, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're covering up a lot of stuff here, and that's no fun for us.
Yeah.
No fun for the planet.
It was something that we didn't maybe even need to study until now, or didn't think that we needed to study until now. But of course, it's bad. But then you cross the border into South Dakota, and what did I see? Endless wind turbine farms. Like, South Dakota is doing really well. There are apparently wind turbines in North Dakota as well. But it was a really stark contrast. Like, you're just seeing endless oil wells. Then you cross the border into South Dakota, and it was endless wind turbines, which was, encouraging, I guess.
And South Dakota is no friend to saving the planet from climate change. But, I think their electricity grid is set up that cheapest one wins, and wind is winning.
No, they've been doing much better in South Dakota. So, I don't know, the rest of the observations from the trip, once we got into Colorado, we started seeing a lot of Rivians. So I've seen a lot of Rivian pickup trucks and the Rivian SUVs.
Rivians were made for Colorado,
Absolutely.
basically.
This is ground zero for Rivian. And Lucid Motors, the luxury electric automaker, they're one of the sponsors of the Telluride Film Festival. So they're all over Telluride. And they're, shuttling the VIPs around in Lucid Airs here in Telluride.
Well, they should sponsor the podcast, Brian, and give me a Lucid Air to drive around with.
So,
if only for a while.
Seen a few Polestars. I saw the new Kia Niro EV. There was one of those. Of course, lots of Lucids. I have a great story about driving into Steamboat Springs in Colorado. This is one of the places that we stopped. It's another mountain town, beautiful place. And as we're pulling into getting near Steamboat Springs, I'm looking at the gauges on the car, and it says it's estimated that we'll have 68% battery when we arrive at our hotel. But I look at the battery and it says 65%. And I'm thinking, oh, well, I guess that's just a mistake. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute. Maybe it's a huge downhill into Steamboat Springs. And sure enough, then we just crested a mountain and it was like 10 minutes downhill into Steamboat Springs. And the battery on the car went from 65% to 68%. It was super fun to watch that.
I had a similar experience on the Coquihalla Highway going, I guess, south. So there was a little climb at the beginning, and then a better route planner was saying, you're basically going to have what you have now. And I thought, oh no, if this is wrong, I'm a stranded James on the Coquihalla Highway, which is basically a freeway in the mountains with nothing around it. So, yeah. But no, that's what happened. And yeah. You got to love electric cars for mountain driving.
Yeah, it's great. They really seem like and anytime you're in a beautiful park like this, it's just always nicer to see EVs and not polluting cars.
Well, my son went back up to his great uncle's house to go to school again, and the uncle says, well, how was your trip to Vancouver in an electric car? I bet it was challenging in the mountains. And he says, no, it was, of course it was easier in the mountains.
Yeah.
And he was trying to figure out, well, I guess I could recharge a little bit, but that doesn't make any sense to me. And, well, he's 83 years old.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try with him, but smart man, just too old to adjust to new technology. And
we stopped in Deadwood, South Dakota as well, which was just sort of a fun place to visit. I'd never been there before. There's that famous TV show, Deadwood, the Old West, right. And it's got that Old West vibe.
Were people carrying sidearms there?
I did not see that.
Funnywood, no. Back in the 70s, they used to carry sidearms into the bar.
Yeah.
In case you had a dispute with somebody, you had to be right. Or if you lost a pool bet or something.
I didn't see it, but I wasn't really looking for it. They had a little Old West shootout at 6:00 on the main street. Like they blocked off the street.
Was it actors or were they just, everybody can just shoot everybody? Is it like a...
No, it was actors, and they fired off guns with blanks, and that was kind of fun. But anyway, very quick wrap up of the Telluride Film Festival. It's the 50th one. It's my first time here. It's been a lot of fun. The very first day we saw Barry Jenkins, who directed Moonlight, Oscar-winning director. He's like an absolute genius filmmaker. He did a great series that's on Amazon Prime of the Underground Railroad, based on that.
Okay, just hold on. I have to have the intro here. Ryan's Movie Corner.
And so he's a total genius. So it was great to see him. He introduced the short films that he curates for the festival. He's had a long association with the festival. He also introduced the Julia Louis-Dreyfus film because he had sort of discovered the director of that. It was a first-time director, and her shorts had been in Telluride, programmed by Barry Jenkins. So that was fun to see. And then again, first night, we saw Wim Wenders, the great German art film director, who most known for Paris, Texas and Wings of Desire, two amazing movies from the 80s. And they presented him with a Telluride Lifetime Achievement Award. And Werner Herzog presented him the award, which was amazing.
And how did you like the films? Because I know you're a curmudgeon old man who doesn't like films and theater. So how did you like the film festival films?
Yeah, well, as you know, I don't like anything. No, they
were adequate.
The Julia Louis-Dreyfus film, it got a pretty tepid applause at the end. I was quite surprised.
Really?
I liked it. I think it's one of those films where critics are going to like it more than audiences. But it's called Tuesday, and it's a weird mix of fairy tale and it's sort of a horror film. It's sort of a comedy. It's a weird mashup. Not a normal.
Oh, that's horrifying to have a tepid applause at a film festival.
I know, and
she's my worst nightmare.
She's in the room, and I thought
she's in the room.
I was just shocked that people stopped applauding so quickly because she's in the room.
Did you try to stretch it out yourself? One man show.
There's only so much
you could with one set of hands.
Yeah. So, and then I got to talk to Wim Wenders. So that was a ton of fun. So that's the good news. The bad news is it was just a conversation about the line for the bathroom because he was presented his award in the Sheridan Opera House, which is this old small town opera house. So, I could have talked to him about the mise en scène in Paris, Texas, but instead it was hey, wait,
retired film professor, filmmaker to filmmaker, but no, you had potty talk.
And then later on, we saw him driving around in a Lucid Air.
Of course.
So, but yeah, it's a small town atmosphere. So walking around the streets, you see people. Ethan Hawke was doing a presentation, so we saw him, and it's kind kind of a wild time. It was a lot of fun.
How did you like your new car? Because this is your first road trip with the Model S that you bought.
No, like I said, it's probably the most amazing road trip car. It's hard to imagine anything better than that. It was just
Is it just the range, or is the size play into it as well? I mean, are there any features?
Well, it's just a super smooth ride. Like it's the range, but it's you put on the cruise control and it's just super smooth, silky smooth ride. If you need to pass somebody on one of these mountain roads, which we needed to do,
Easy peasy.
you could do it obviously too quickly.
Yeah, they've. I realize we're not talking about this on the show today, but it's a major story that they refreshed the Model 3. So maybe we should just give it a little plug here. What are your impressions about this? What are they called? Highland, the Model 3 Highland. That's the first time they've done a major refresh on it. And some people saying it. Some automotive journalists are calling it practically a whole new car. It looks a little different, and it has a lot of different stuff under the hood.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's not using the big castings that we were expecting. Like the Model 3 can be made with these large castings, so it's easier to make. It sounds like they didn't do that, so it's not all, these under the hood changes are maybe not as extensive as we thought. But, most car manufacturers refresh their cars every few years. And people have been complaining that Tesla, they've only got 4 models and they're getting a bit stale, but they're kind of refreshing them at the same rate that, say, I think Volkswagen does. So the, Model 3 came out in 2018. So a nice new version. Now it's only going to be available so far in China. I guess we might get them here in Canada because they are sending some of those Chinese made Model 3s to Canada. So China, Europe, Canada might get some of these, but they have not, as far as I know, refreshed it for the ones they make in California, but presumably that's coming soon.
Here's the thing. I think Tesla was charging a lot more if you didn't get white, right? So a lot of people had white. You got white in your car.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of white Model 3s around in Canada, especially when I went to Vancouver when there's a higher density of things and you get sick of them. Well, now they're not charging extra for the colors. So that's one way of, getting over this. Is there too many Teslas on the road where you live? Spice up the colors. Maybe they could even add more colors, at some point in the future. So hopefully, the badging's a bit different, but the range is longer too, right? I mean, they're talking about, 50 kilometers extra range or something like that in the short range, standard range. So that stuff adds up, and it's significant, like that range means a lot to people. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, no,
it does make a difference on the highway.
And of course, some people are annoyed that they're lowering prices all the time because if you just bought one, then suddenly it's worth less when the price goes down. They have started to advertise a bit. This is another, the weird quirk of Tesla is they've so far achieved this level of success without advertising. Just word of mouth. They have started to do that a little bit, but as they ramp up, they got to figure out different ways to just sell more cars. So, including the different colors for free is a way to do it, because they're not planning to slow down. They're planning to just increase production as much as they possibly can.
So I did a check yesterday. It was a very smoky day here, sunny, completely sunny, but smoky. So I did a check of my solar, and it was 18% less than it was a year ago on a completely sunny day.
Yikes.
So, I mean, it could have been worse. I expected it might have been worse, but still, climate change is causing less green electricity. It's a feedback loop. And then my beloved swimming pool, it's the saddest day of the year when I have to close it. And it's always around now because the sun gets weaker, the days get shorter a little bit. And it's just not the same sort of heating, even on a 33 Celsius day like it was yesterday. It's not anywhere near what it is in July, for example, or June. So it just doesn't heat up anymore. It gets cool at night, and I have to abandon it. And it's been the worst pool season ever because of the smoke. The smoke has really affected the thermal heating of the pool for some reason. It's getting through to the PV, the photovoltaic solar panels on my rooftop, but not so much on the other way with
that's too bad.
Thermal heating the pool. So I don't think I was even in it in August other than to clean it once, and I can't imagine not being in my pool in August. So I really miss that. It is a relief from gravity, and is my my happy place, my pool. I could spend all day there, and I do. So it's closed yesterday, and that was sad.
Well,
and it was a smoky, crappy day.
Taken a couple of trips this summer, but with those couple of trips, I've missed the worst smoky days.
Unreal. And, Brian, if this is our future, I have to rethink my strategy. Like, A, do I want to live here? B, my air conditioner, I used to use it 3 or 4 times a year, and I've been using it all the time. Even now I've been using it. So that sucks. My air conditioner's old, and it's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost me money to run it instead of opening the windows at night, which I used to do. So it bites. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. An air filter might be in my future.
That's one of the reasons we got our heat pump, is so that we could, keep the windows closed during the summer, which we never thought we'd have to do, but we just realized recently.
Well, you picked a good year to get it, boy. Holy cow.
It was really, really fortuitous timing with that, because it's just, for this week that we've been away, our sons are there, and it's just been on the whole time. Our first story here is about Kia. So this is from Electric Autonomy Canada, and it's a story about Kia has partnered up with a company called Ocean Cleanup that is harvesting plastic from the ocean. I think everybody's, sort of heard of this by now, but of course there's a gigantic floating patch of plastic in the Pacific Ocean called the Great.
Okay, Brian, let me stop you here.
Yeah.
There's constant news stories about how we're not recycling the plastic that we have on land, that we're sending it off to other countries and they're not getting recycled properly. Why are they going to the ocean to find plastics? I mean, I know they're there, and I know it'd be nice to clean it up, but why are they recycling those and not the ones that I put in my recycling bin?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I mean, we need to get that plastic out of the ocean eventually. So I think that's the positive of this, is that, are we just going to leave the great garbage patch in the ocean for the next 1,000 years?
Well, it should be nicely washed.
But anyway, so yeah, Ocean Cleanup is the sort of nonprofit organization that collects this stuff. They have their own system for doing it. And this was apparently the largest ever collection. This batch that they just got for Kia was dropped off in Victoria, BC in August. And it's, a new record for the amount that they've been able to take out. So, this Ocean Cleanup company, they can get money from companies that want to be green or do green things or appear to be green. But yeah, it's we have laws coming into place in Canada now about single-use plastics. I mean, this is a road we just went down 20, 30 years ago, where suddenly we were just using, plastic bottles one time. It was a terrible idea. And, so we just have way too much plastic, way more than we can ever recycle. And obviously a bunch of it ends up in the ocean, which is not good.
I guess it pays for itself. If you got a buyer for your plastic, then it encourages you to go clean up the ocean. But recycling is still an issue.
Yeah, it's huge.
Brian, Bloomberg says electric cars have passed a tipping point in 23 countries now. Now, I think they consider a tipping point of 5% looking at technological adoption curves of different things like color TVs and cell phones. And basically, it goes very slow and at a gradual graph increase on your graph chart. And then when you hit 5% or so, it starts to really go up like an S. And then when it hits 90, like it has in Norway, then it levels off again. And that's the top part of the S on the right side of the graph. So they've increased it to 23 countries right now. And they say the fast part of the technology adoption curve is happening now with electric vehicles. According to their Bloomberg Green analysis of adoption rates around the world, a critical tipping point is 5% of new car sales powered only by electricity. So we're not talking about plug-in hybrids here. We're talking about full electric vehicles, no gas tank. The newcomers, Canada, Australia, Spain. And by the way, we have listeners in Australia and Spain, and no one ever writes us from there.
Please do.
Maybe Australia, Spain. I can think of some other countries. Denmark, Germany, Japan now. We have people in Japan listening and India. So drop us a line just to say hi.
Yeah, and of course,
all you do is say hi.
The forest fire smoke from Canada has reached as far as Spain. So if anyone from Spain has been a victim of our forest fire smoke, please let us know.
Write us to complain. So yeah, all those countries, U.S. and China and most of Western Europe are already there, even though, I guess we're surpassing the U.S. in some ways in Canada. The trajectory laid out by these early adopters shows how EVs can surge from 5% to 25% of new car sales in just 4 years. So now once you hit the 5%, you can expect 4 years later to be up around 1 in 4 vehicles sold. So I think Canada, for example, hit that, I think, in January or February 2022. So in 2026, you can expect 1 in 4. And I think they might hit that 1 in 4 threshold in British Columbia, the province on the West Coast this year. It's one of those West Coast things where EV adoption is supported and encouraged and embraced.
Yeah. Imagine the peer pressure to buy an electric car if you live in Vancouver. It must be huge.
Yeah, but you get to the point where your neighbor has one. So if you have doubts or preconceptions or misconceptions, I mean, those get erased when, your neighbor on either side. And by the way, my neighbor next door has EVs on either side of her.
Wow.
I'm one of them, obviously, because I'm on the one side with 2 EVs, and the person moved in with a Tesla on the other side of her. So she's surrounded by Teslas.
Yeah.
And her late husband used to have the Corvette, and I used to smell his fumes while he revved his engine in the driveway. So once the universal challenges of car costs no longer a problem, and charger availability and driver skepticism, if these things are solved for the few, the masses soon follow, Bloomberg writes. And I tend to agree with that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that once you reach a certain point, things really slide off the scales here. U.S. EV sales are rising faster, up 42% in the second quarter compared to the same period a year ago, but haven't quite matched the explosive trajectory of other countries that have crossed over. And that could change as Tesla, the world's biggest EV maker, prepares to launch its Cybertruck pickup, perhaps any day now. Or there's an event, right?
I think there's a date now coming up in the next week or two. So it's finally going to happen.
Yeah. So we got lots more EVs coming out, as you know, as we talk about on the show. Lots of, including models that are icons like the Chevy Blazer and Silverado and Ford Explorer, and of course the F-150, Jeep Wrangler, Ram 1500. Lots of things coming. So that's good news, and we'll keep an eye on it.
No, and I wasn't on my list, but there's another $15 billion from the Biden administration in the U.S. for remaking car factories. So it's an even further subsidy for the U.S. automakers to get on board with EVs, perhaps because they've realized, how expensive it is going to be. And it's going to be a tough transition for them as they start to lose money on their gas cars, which no one's going to be buying soon-ish.
And how much of that will Toyota get? I mean, they're probably still slowing down and reticent, and they don't have the cars to make. I mean, they're developing the cars. They claim they're developing the cars, but I don't know. I predict that, Toyota's already gotten money from the Japanese government. They are the biggest. They practically run Japan, Toyota.
Yeah.
They're the president of all the auto company associations, so they kind of guide the auto industry there. And the auto industry, of course, is a big chunk of the economy there. And if, they're screwed, then Japan is screwed. And our listeners in Japan may not like that. So hello, Japan. Send us an email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Okay, so London is now the world's largest low-emission zone. We talked about this before. London basically had a small part of their downtown blocked off from people who with bad polluting vehicles. You couldn't drive them there unless you paid about $20 or so American to get in, and they'll have cameras that will read your license plate and know what your car is. So if you're driving an older diesel that has a lot of particulate pollution, that's what they want. And they've noticed that the air has gotten cleaner. And then this happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
So they said, hey, let's expand it. But it was started by Boris Johnson. I mean, it's hard to like Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Even the hair is enough to disqualify him as a human being. But he started this, and the subsequent mayor has asthma, and he's got, a vested interest in this. So they've expanded the zone vastly last week, and it has inspired mayors from around the world to act. While the final expansion of the ULEZ, or Z, ultra low emissions zone, is a continuation of clean air changes that have been tightening since 2008 under Boris, when he was mayor of London, and now his successor, Sadiq Khan. The last phase has been the most controversial. People have been fighting back, trying to sue them, but they won a lawsuit in July. I wasn't sure it was going to happen until that lawsuit was settled, and they won. The government won. So $15.72 per day levy for the most non-compliant vehicles now hits those living in outer boroughs of London. So yeah, people tend to be more car dependent in the suburbs, as we would call them in North America, but the outer boroughs there are people with lower incomes, not necessarily low income, but they're not able to just go buy a new electric vehicle easily if they wanted to necessarily. So the pollution charges particularly target older diesel vehicles, which tend to create more harmful concentrations of nitrogen dioxide, or NO2, in the air, more than, say, gas, because of the differences in the way the fuel is combusted. And it says, for Khan, the battle is to tackle these emissions. It has been worth it. As a sufferer of adult onset asthma, he's made London's air quality personal mission. Now, London, Brian, used to have one of the worst air qualities in the world. It's hard to believe when it comes to these particulate emissions. And some political opponents think the mayor has gone too far, and others say he's not going far enough to reduce the smog. But people benefit. I mean, people will not die because of this decision. I mean, that's pretty significant. When people, especially when you have a public healthcare system, even if you don't, I mean, it costs society money when people get sick and die. And this is a very good thing, especially with, development in children as well is affected by these pollutants. So, yeah, he'd like to see Simon Burkett, who founded the campaign Clean Air in London, said he'd like to see the next mayor take things a step further and completely ban diesel vehicles on the city's roads. And I bet you, Brian, that's going to happen. And because diesel's getting banned in a lot of places in Europe and cities, and already sales of new diesel cars in London have been declining, falling to about 5,400 in 2022, but it was a peak of about 69,000 in 2016. And then Dieselgate happened, and then, yeah.
And of course, I was walking by a school here in Telluride, and there was a sign in front of the school, low emission vehicle pickup and drop off zone. So if you've got, a clean car, you can get sort of priority.
Pick up your kid.
For where to pick up your kids, because of course you don't want the fumes and exhaust.
You don't want a diesel vehicle pickup truck, an F-250, to be sitting outside your school while other kids are waiting for mom and dad and breathing that crap. That is, it's like we say, like you've said before, the smoking used to be acceptable.
Yeah.
Now it's not.
Yeah.
And by God, that's where we're going with this other stuff.
Yeah. And as no smoking zones have increased, one of the things, like you can't smoke around the doors anymore of most public buildings like schools and stuff. You got to go like 30 feet from the door because we don't want your stinky cigarette smoke as we walk into a building.
That's right.
Okay. So a story from Clean Technica. So California, which is apparently the 5th largest economy in the world, has now signed on to the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. And I don't think we've talked about this on the show, but this is a grassroots, proposal that has started to gain some serious traction. And when you can get California to sign on, that's a really good sign. So the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty is basically a blueprint for how we get off of oil and gas and transition to clean energy in a way that is fair, but also fast. And so this is a big coup for the movement to get California to sign onto this. It's still obviously going to take the actual work. California still is going to have to do the actual work to make these things happen. But nevertheless, this is a really big deal.
People are leaving California. They're starting to lose people now to Texas and other places because it's too crowded and it's too burny. And also there's these billionaires who are trying to build a new city by San Francisco. They bought all this land. these tech billionaires,
Really?
and they're hoping to perhaps build a whole new city. Well, and to be clean, I don't know how techy it would be. Some of these tech cities go overkill in their, connected environment where everybody has to have a number on their forehead, barcode on their forehead or something. But it's just, I don't know.
Yeah. So a story here from Electrek about battery longevity. So this is sort of getting back to Tesla for a second here. Tesla, of course, the biggest electric car maker in the world, and all of their cars are networked and data driven, so you can collect data on everything. And so we've always wondered how much fast charging your electric car is going to deplete the batteries or lower the range of your electric car battery. It's something people have been worried about for a long time. But this study kind of shows how much this is really early days for all of this stuff. Tesla used to warn about that in their website, and apparently they don't do that anymore. So they've looked at the data as well. But this is the first time it's been sort of quantified. And this is a report from Recurrent. And so they have access to some of the Tesla data through another website that people can sign up for with their Tesla cars. So yeah, they've done a study, and they have found with 6,300 Tesla Model 3s that they have in their study, and then 4,400 Model Ys that they have in their study, that they compared basically those who only did maybe 10% fast charging to those who did 90% fast charging. So there's people that say live in an apartment building, they don't have access to a plug at home. So there's people that fast charge their Teslas 90% of the time or even more. And the study proves, as they were able to get the data from these cars, that it really has basically no effect, that you can slow charge or fast charge, and the battery degradation is going to be about the same.
I can't, wrap my head around that, because I'm an owner of an old Nissan Leaf. Very degraded.
Yeah.
Very, very degraded. One way they do it is with battery chemistry, and the other way is with battery management. The computer that manages the charging of the battery doesn't charge it too full. They reserve some space on the top and the bottom where you're not really charging to
cooling system.
Better cooling system. You're not really charging to 100%. You're not really draining it to zero. So that makes the batteries last longer than what we're used to in our laptops and our cell phones and things like that. It's pretty remarkable, because when you start to factor that into using it as a taxi, using it as an Uber, using it as a robo-taxi, which is the long, promise, which is probably years away, I would think. It's the economics changes, and then the EV adoption accelerates even further when the price of one vehicle doesn't include a battery replacement after 5 years of continuous use or something like that, or even 3 years or something like that, that it can last what a normal person would do for 25 years or something, akin to that, where you have a moderate reduction in range that after 25 years, who cares? You're probably passing that car down to a high school student by then. And, they're not going to need 100% of the range that you have today. They can deal with 70 or whatever it is. So that's really good. And that changes the economics of things, which helps speed up the energy transition. It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Burning Man death under probe, with thousands still stranded. We're recording this a little bit early this week, as Brian is going to be traveling. So basically all these hipsters went into Burning Man. These rich people, I don't know. You haven't been to Burning Man, obviously. You're not a Burning Man. You're not a Burning Man type. You're a relax on a couch kind of guy.
No, I met a deadhead on the gondola going down to the village. He was a deadhead guy.
Close. One person died during this rain event. I guess they're out in the desert, and they had, a year's worth of rain in a day or something like that, 2 to 3 months of rain in a day, and 70,000 people were stranded there. They were advised to conserve food. The problem is, Brian, it's a desert. And if you're stuck in the desert, even if it rains one day from a storm, you can't move. You can't walk. You can't move your vehicles. And it's a lot, some people, even celebrities, Chris Rock, I think, was picked up by people he was hiking with, another celebrity. And, it's just unpleasant. By the way, all the late night TV show talk show hosts, Stephen Colbert, Fallon, all of them. They got together to do a podcast to support their staff. They're selling ads.
Nice.
And they call it Strike Force 5. And every time they say Strike Force 5 in the show, there's a thunderclap. Just like we used to have for when we mentioned the lightning round. So they're copying us. These rich people with their podcasts are copying us from here. It's just sad. And you know they listen to the show. From Canada's Globe and Mail, the rural municipalities of Alberta says it never asked for a pause on approvals of renewable energy projects in the province. Now, last week or last time on the show, we talked about Premier Daniel Smith and that oil-happy province banning all development and projects of solar and wind for 7 months in practicality, and $25 billion worth of investments shunned away for political nonsense to appease really dumb people in the rural ridings that vote. And yeah, but she said, they wanted the rural municipalities of Alberta wanted this, and they said, nope, we didn't ask for this. We didn't even know it was possible. So she's lying. God, I love politicians who lie. For Nanaimo Bulletin in Nanaimo, BC, Canada, natural gas will not be the primary heat source in new homes built in Nanaimo starting next year. City Council voted 5-4 to accelerate adoption of the zero carbon step code to 2024, 6 years ahead of the province's timeline of 2030, where the province will be banning new gas installations. Then it is time for some nuclear news. Remember the song and dance about Sweden building 10 new nuclear reactors and restarting their nuke program? Well, I guess reality is set in, and the Swedish government removed nuclear power promises from their website. That's that. It's time for a CS Fast Fact. From EcoWatch, an estimated 706 million gallons of oil enter the ocean every year, which has massive human and environmental impacts.
Maybe all that plastic will soak it up.
It is. The plastic is oil. I wonder if they count that. The International Renewable Energy Agency has come out with its annual cost report on renewables. Solar is down 3% annually. Offshore wind is actually up due to the explosion of it, I guess, in some parts of the world and supply constraint. Onshore wind is down a whopping 5%. That's in 1 year, man. That's 1 year. That's a pretty significant change. Concentrating solar power, that's when we have the mirrors pointed at a tower with fluid in it, usually in deserts. That's down 2%. Bioenergy is down 13%. I guess they're getting better at that. And geothermal is down 22%, so they're getting better at that. A lot of the cost of geothermal is drilling. Hydropower is up 18%, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your view on hydro, because it does destroy the environment. VW will electrify the GTI. Saw a video this morning, Brian. Pretty cool. I know a lot of people who drive GTIs, and they are the diesel snobs who think electric is not going to cut it. And now their precious GTI is going to be electric and probably pretty fast and sexy, I'd imagine, too. Hot hatch.
I've always liked those cars. I've always wanted one. And the electric version would be the only one to have.
Absolutely. Fast as heck and slick. There's a new 68 mile per hour, 100 kilometer per hour electric unicycle. I forgot that I wrote this. That I was expecting to say small carb. It's a unicycle. Brian, I can think of 1,000 ways I could die, and this is one of my least favorites. So this is just no. Why?
Yeah, I saw a video of this. Somebody doing big jumps and stuff in this mass.
That's highway speeds on a unicycle. No. This is people are going to die from the advent of lithium batteries and their many uses. We talked about that Ukrainian wind farm that was constructed through the war. They were putting it together. I guess it's online now, phase 1 of it. DTEC DTEK resumed the construction with an all-Ukrainian crew a while back, I think last September, and it reached 650 people at its peak. During wartime, dodging missiles, staff worked in bulletproof vests and spent more than 300 hours in bomb shelters from September 2022 through April of this year. And they were under the constant threat of missile strikes, yet they persevered through it all, says Power Magazine. And finally this week, from Politico, explosive growth in solar power means most EU countries will hit their 2030 renewable energy targets ahead of time. The European bloc has had 40% increase in 2022 over 2021, and that's expected to rise even more this year. Some 23 countries are slated to reach their solar installation targets by 2027. That means millions of more tons of greenhouse gas emissions are being saved each year than predicted. The explosive growth is down to plummeting prices for solar panels being mass-produced in China. The war in Ukraine also created a major incentive for countries to push ahead with solar installations as a way to lower their dependency on Russian energy. Jenny Chase with Bloomberg says, to be honest, we've never been very good at our most optimistic predictions have nearly always undershot the market. And this is somebody who lives solar, and they're constantly getting blown away. They're never able to predict Bloomberg. It's always better than their rosiest predictions. And it's hard to fault them for that, but solar is just that pervasive, and we are aware of that on this show. This is what we talk about, and a lot of people have to come on board to realize just how of an economic factor that cheap solar is in the cleaning up of the world. So it's down into difficulties of predicting the cost and efficiency improvements in Chinese manufacturing of solar panels, because they are getting better, and the data quickly goes out of date. But prediction errors could also mean climate change efforts are going to be better than expected worldwide. How often do you hear that, Brian?
It's a whole new world. It's great to hear.
That is our show for this week. We are happy to be back. We had a week off last week, and thank you for allowing us to do that, because it's good to have a week off from time to time. Please contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. It's in your show notes if you don't remember me saying that. All one word, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We'd like to hear whatever you have to say. It doesn't matter what it is. We love to hear from you. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for special features, and check out the Clean Energy Store where our merchandise is there. And I've got a new hat in there, Brian, a September special, a dad cap that is distressed to remind everyone of me. Distressed to dad. If you're new to the show, remember, follow us on your podcast app to get new episodes delivered every week. It doesn't cost you a thing, and we're there for you every Wednesday. See you next time.
See you next week.